Hi, I'm Rochelle. I'm the Communications Librarian at the Swickley Public Library. You will notice I am not at the library right now. I am at home, as well are most of you. And if you're like me and you kind of had a little extra time here at home, you probably found yourself baking a lot. I definitely have been, specifically banana bread. I have a really great recipe that I got from a family member that I was hoping to share with you guys today. It is a really, really good bread that is really hard to mess up. Pretty much the only thing you could do is burn it, but it's really easy. It comes together really well, and really excited to share it with you today. So we don't need a whole lot to make it. You don't need any fancy equipment, a big stand mixer or anything. Unnecessary. If you have it, fantastic. If not, you can use a fork. But there's a couple different ways we can bake this. I typically make it in a loaf pan. I have a glass one I really enjoy. I also have a metal pan. But for banana bread, I tend to put it in a glass pan because my family will hack at it with a knife and ruin my metal pan when they do that. So that's what we're going to be using today. I also have used in the past smaller loaf pans. This recipe will do about 4 of the smaller size loaves. You can also do cupcake sizes as well, just depending on what you need. Of course, you'll adjust your baking times. So we're gonna get to it. You are going to want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Let it get good and hot. So we start it now, and as we make the recipe, it should be hot by the time we are ready to actually bake. For ingredients, you're gonna need flour, baking soda, salt, baking powder, water, sugar, butter, eggs, medium bananas. You're gonna need about 3 to 4 medium-sized bananas for this recipe. Like I said, it's a really forgiving recipe, and it can be tweaked. And then if you want, you can add about a half a cup of nuts. That's optional. I personally do not like nuts in my banana bread, but I know a lot of people do. So if you would like to go nuts, throw some nuts in there. So I already have all of my ingredients measured out, and we're gonna start. I will admit, when I get lazy, I will just make this entire recipe in one giant bowl. It probably works better when we mix the dry ingredients separate, so that's what we're gonna do today. But it's a forgiving recipe. You can do what you want. So we're gonna start by mixing our dry ingredients. We're gonna use 1 2/3 cup of flour. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Now that we have our dry ingredients together, we're gonna go ahead and set that bowl aside, bring in your big bowl, and we'll get started mixing the wet ingredients. For our wet ingredients, we're gonna start by adding 1/2 a cup of butter. So that's also 1 stick of butter. If you're like me, I normally do not prepare ahead for when I'm going to bake something. So my butter is often quite hard after sitting in the fridge. I will microwave it for a short while. You can see I overdid it a little bit there. I will set my power setting to a much lower setting, so about 30%, which gets the butter to a much more manageable texture, which you can see we can mash it a lot better. Next, we are going to add 1 cup of sugar. This is a wonderfully sweet bread. We can go ahead and add our eggs. So now we have our eggs, our butter, and our sugar all mixed together. Sometimes at this point I'll add like a half a teaspoon of vanilla in or a little sprinkle of cinnamon. But today we're just gonna make a very basic recipe. Now we are going to add our bananas. I have 3 very ripened bananas. This recipe, like I said, is so flexible. You can use 3 to 4 medium-sized bananas. Of course, if you use 4, it'll make a little more batter. Just be aware of that. It might take a little extra longer to cook, but again, it's a forgiving recipe. So we're gonna go ahead and add those in. Alright, so we're gonna just mash these wonderfully ripened bananas in our bowl. So you'll just go ahead and stir it up a bit, make sure there's no majorly big chunks of banana in there. We can see the banana is mostly mashed in. So we're gonna go ahead and mix our dry ingredients in. And again, this is a really easy recipe. You don't really have to worry about adding the dry ingredients in slowly. I tend to just dump them. Again, if you're used to that and you want to add it in slowly, go ahead. You work it how you want. So you'll notice that this is a very, very thick batter right now, and that is where our water comes in. So oftentimes you have banana bread and it's really dry. The one amazing thing about this recipe is it is not dry. It is a very moist bread, and the secret to that is adding that 1/3 cup of water. That water truly makes a difference in the texture of this bread. It just makes it a lot lighter and it keeps it from drying out, thankfully. So now that our batter is all mixed up, we can go ahead and pour it into our baking dish. Again, I'm using a bread dish there. And I've greased mine with butter. You can also add parchment paper if you want to your greased butter dish. If you want to make sure you can pull that loaf out so you can slice it nice. We tend not to get that far. We just take a knife right to the dish. So, forgive me. Let's find an easier way to do this. I'm right-handed, this makes it challenging. Okay, fun in the kitchen with Rochelle, huh? Here we go. So we're gonna go ahead and pour our batter into our baking dish. So delicious. It smells so good. All right. So now we have our wonderful batter in our dish. We're gonna pop this in the oven for around 45 minutes to an hour. This is where it gets the trickiest. Don't worry, it's not that tricky. You just have to look at it, poke it with a stick, see if it's done. Final test. It is done, hooray! So here we have our finished bread. It took about an hour to cook, but it's finally done. Stuck a toothpick in it, it came out clean. It's good to go. So we're just gonna let it cool and then hopefully we'll get to enjoy it and have a really good breakfast tomorrow or a late night snack. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you get to make some of your own bread, and we want to hear about it. Let us know what you think in the comments. I also want to say thank you to my Aunt Kelly for the awesome banana bread recipe. It turns out amazing every time. If you want to watch any more virtual videos and events, you can check them out on our website, swickleylibrary.org, under the events page. And you can also check out our YouTube channel, Swickley Public Library, where we have lots of great videos of our story times and teen programs, and there's always lots going on. So thank you so much for tuning in.